Speaking of bonuses, it's time for Prospecting with the Welsh. That's right, everybody, because we got ourselves a fancy futures game coming up soon. And Welsh will get to talk about some of them kids who might get some opportunities to play in that their futures game. So Welsh, let's start with a guy here who I actually added in my home league this past weekend, Trey Yesavage, who has been Yesavage. I love the kid's delivery. It's super fun, very over the top. Yep. I'm trying to get a comp in my mind of who that reminds me of because you don't see a lot of those kind of guys nowadays in the big leagues. But Yesavage has flown through the minor leagues. The Blue Jays, we reported last week on Leading Off that they might actually bring him up at some point this season. That's how quick this rise has been. So let's talk about the meteoric rise of Trey Yesavage, and you look at the stats here for him too. They've been pretty spectacular, Welsh.
Yep, and we're starting in the AL for the futures game. A pitcher and a hitter, or at least two players in the AL, two players in the NL, and I did follow the hitter and pitcher marker. This is the only guy that's at AA because the futures game is just littered with, you got low A, you got guys like Jesus Mate that are playing all the way up to AAA guys. So, picking and choosing between the guys that can make impact this year is a little bit lower. And this is a guy that's not at AA or not a AAA. He's at AA. But you mentioned they talked about him potentially being in part of that rotation, and I think they could use the rotation help, and he has been phenomenal. We're going to see him on stage. Looks like he's going to pitch, and with this team competing, I really think even if you put him in short stints, bullpen, you get him in spot starts. 111 strikeouts over 67 innings. He's got this really nasty splitter, and as Joe mentioned, this overhand delivery. Overhand deliveries, like long-term sustainability, are kind of a question. Lance Brzdowski's talked about this. It's a question I've always had over a couple years. Anytime you see these guys, like Jonah Tong does it, Yesavage does it, but his stuff is nasty. The fastball and that splitter combination, I think, are going to really, really give fits at the major league level. So we'll see him in the futures game. Keep a close eye. I think it's a possibility that he's a guy after the futures game could just be sent out to AAA. And then after that, we've seen guys, we saw Chase Burns get 2 starts in AAA. I don't think it's out of pocket to say by August, you could see Trey Yesavage in the rotation for the Blue Jays. So this is a real possibility. So keep a close eye on him. I do think in the short sample size of what he'd pitch into the season, I think he could find some good success while hitters are trying to readjust to him because he's just a little bit more of a unique guy that hits the zone with that nasty splitter.
You know what's so interesting too? Tim Lincecum was a guy that had that, he's a smaller guy, obviously. Yeah. He had a very over the top because he had created so much leverage. Like that's almost in my head when I watch him pitch. He kind of reminds me a little bit of that. There's been other guys too, like Nomo was a very big over the top guy. It's not something you see very often. It's funny, actually, Ubaldo Jimenez, a guy we were chatting about last week, kind of had a little of that in him as well. But he was very over the top, which is really unique and interesting. And I think it creates a very uncomfortable at bat. So from all the tape that I've seen on him, that's one thing that stood out. Brice Matthews, another guy who's standing out in the futures game in the American League. AAA right now for the Houston Astros on the year, 51 runs scored, 10 homers, 24 steals, hitting 280 with a 401 OBP and an 880 OPS. Now it's PCL, but if you go back to 2024, still some pretty good numbers there for him, and that's what you want to see. You want to see him producing in other spots. So he still had a 376 OBP in AA last year. So it is not a joke. It's not a surprise. But Brice Matthews, a guy right now who, you got to say, certainly the Astros, the longer Alvarez is out, more offense needs to be found. So is this a piece that they move potentially to bring in more offense? Or is this a kid that we might see in August?
Well, you also got the injury with Jeremy Pena. So I don't know. I'm not sure they want to come off of that.
That's kind of a short-termer, though, isn't it?
Well, maybe if they're telling us the truth. Alvarez wasn't supposed to be this long-term either, so I don't know. But I don't think he's a trade chip. They don't have a ton of trade chips, and I think you want to hold a piece or two, and I think this is the one they want to. He's one of those, analytical – there were a couple guys from the draft a couple years ago who had these, just analytical standouts who had just big EVs. Lou James Grover with the Diamondbacks. Brice Matthews was another one of those. And I just don't think they will, because I think he's going to thrive when getting to Houston. This year, he was in AAA last year. He's increased his max EV from 105 last year to a above average 111. His average EV was about 88 miles an hour last year. It's almost 91 this year. Hard hit rate is up, and he's got a great launch angle. It's around 13 right now, just about 13. So you get him there, I think it's going to start flying. His problem is strikeouts. He's definitely got a strikeout problem. This is a guy that obviously is just trying to strike the ball really hard, but it's a 30% strikeout rate, but 10 homers, 24 stolen bases, really good impact. Ball flies off. If he can cut the strikeouts down, that could even make him more enticing. But I just wonder if the Astros look to him post futures game as well, post All-Star break, as just like you said, an injection into their offense. 2 years of AAA kind of tells us the story of a player that can't be there much longer. So that's why Brice Matthews is on this list, especially in the AL. And I think we could see him pretty soon. And I actually think he could maybe surprise a tiny bit once he gets to the majors, just because I think that ballpark is going to fare well for him. So I would have a little bit more interest maybe than you would think once he gets called up.
But long term, he's not going to play shortstop for this team. Not with Jeremy Pena there. I think we can agree on that, right?
No, I mean, Pena's a superstar. Yeah.
Right. So basically what we're looking for him to take over second base eventually. I think that's probably what you're looking at when it comes to Brice Matthews. So if you're looking at dynasty leagues, that, should make some sense to you in terms of how to judge his future. Let's talk National League futures, guys. Owen Caissie, the first guy we're going to talk about. This guy at AAA for the Cubs this year has been terrific. 52 runs, 16 homers, 39 RBI, 3 steals for good measure, a 280 batting average, a 944 OPS. This seems like the big chip that if the Cubs are going to go get a pitcher, that's going to get moved. And considering that they've already put their chips in there for, Kyle Tucker, and they moved Cam Smith already, and they have Pete Crow Armstrong, it feels like they have the depth in the outfield to make this kind of move too if they want to.
I don't think this move of our excitement is him being a Cub. It's probably going to him being a Marlin. I think I've seen the Owen Caissie for Sandy Alcantara stuff floated out there. His bat, just like Brice Matthews, AAA last year, AAA this year, average EV is up like over 2 miles per hour. It's almost at 92 miles per hour, gets the ball in the air, almost 52% hard hit rate. He's played really well, and there's only so much longer he can be there. But like Brice Matthews, the strikeout rate over 30% at AAA is going to have people concerned, but there's just big offensive bat. It kind of reminds me of like how the Marlins got Kyle Stowers. If they were to go and get an Owen Caissie, I think you would throw him in probably hitting like behind Agustin Ramirez, and he's like a 5 hitter. But there's big, massive power. He is hitting for average, and you know what? Frankly, he is hit for average at every level AA above. So regardless of the strikeouts, that speaks well. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be a superstar or anything like that, but a fantasy run, we've seen what Ramirez has done. I think Owen Caissie, AAA, is going to be kind of spotlighted during the futures game, and I think he could be a big trade chip that probably wherever he's traded goes in and starts like in their lineup pretty soon. So keep a close eye on Owen Caissie.
We've been keeping a close eye on Andrew Painter for a while, and there's been a ton of hype around him, but he does have an ERA of 4.5 right now. I know he's still striking guys out. I know he is arguably the number 1 pitching prospect in baseball, and we've had that hype train before not deliver us to the station. So what do you make of Painter's struggles so far at AAA? And I'm saying struggle in the sense that like he's had some good outings and obviously some rocky ones. That's how you get to a 4.5 ERA. I know sometimes those numbers can be a little inflated because obviously his innings are very limited. So of course, if he has a bad start, it's going to blow that ERA up. But have you seen anything out of Painter recently that makes you think he can contribute to the Phillies this season?
Yeah, I still regardless of what some of those results look like, I think he has dominant stuff, and I think he's just going to eat when he's there. And we've talked a lot about Painter. There's a lot of guys we could have talked. There's players we have talked about. I made this a futures game centric one, talking about players we hadn't up until this one. But this specifically stands out to me because I think post All-Star game, maybe even announcement during All-Star weekend, Andrew Painter, I think, could get thrown into the rotation. Mick Abel sent down after the struggles. They got Taijuan Walker in the rotation right now, and God knows when Aaron Nola is going to be there. The point of Andrew Painter this entire year has been they were going to build him up until July, and then he was going to be joining the rotation. Guess what? They built him up. He's not pitching in the futures game. Specifically, why? because I think he's going to get the call up, and post All-Star break, he is going to be in the rotation and he's going to get some starts. Now, will that hold? I don't know. They could bring Mick Abel back. Aaron Nola could have some positive news. Like, things could happen, but I think he's going to be there. And regardless of what some of those results are, he'll throw a lot in the zone, which I think has led to a little bit of that ERA. And I think they can fix it, but it's a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. He's got a 90-plus-mile-an-hour cutter, which is great. His slider is sick. His curveball is sick. He's just got the arsenal that I think he's going to succeed regardless of these results. And I think I'm going to just predict we're going to get a nice sneaky announcement maybe during that All-Star weekend that Andrew Painter is going to be up in the majors, in the, whatever that would be, like in the July 20 range.
So we've got Wheeler, we've got Sanchez, we've got Ranger Suarez. Lazardo's not getting bounced, right? You don't think so? Even though he's
no, it's Suarez. Suarez is in the rotation right now because Mick Abel's gone and Aaron Nola's hurt. Now, if Aaron Nola were to come back,
I counted him. Wheeler, Sanchez.
Oh, Walker.
Suarez.
I'm sorry, Taiwan Walker. My
Walker's
apologies.
In there right now to take over that Abel spot. Is an Andrew Painter announcement an indictment of the health of Aaron Nola?
I don't think it's an indictment. It could be a bridge, because if Aaron Nola comes back, then he would get painted. But it could be either way. You could look at it either way. I'm not going to read it as anything to Aaron Nola, in that they said they were going to get him major league starts, and they're getting him major league starts right after the break at some expense. Now, if Nola was healthy, that puts a bigger question. And we always asked, how is this going to happen? Well, guess what? Pitching health is a farce. And that's why, you got to have 6, 7, 8 guys. That's why Chad Patrick gets sent down by the Brewers. He's not getting traded. No, they need depth. Every team needs depth. And Andrew Painter is going to provide that. And I think he'll be up very, very soon.
That is Prospecting with the Welsh. Make sure you follow us here on our social media. And of course, Fantasy Pros MLB on the YouTube channel. Subscribe so you don't miss a piece of action here in the world of fantasy baseball.